I need you to know your staff and your elders and your deacons are savage. There was one moment we had passed, and one person opened this gift, and you just saw the joy of Christmas in this person's eyes. They were like, yes, oh my goodness, I want this. This is the coolest thing that's been, yeah. Everybody who was there was like laughing because they know exactly what I'm talking about. And then another person, it was so awesome, it made the whole night. They said, you know what? I'll take that. And they walked away with it. It was amazing. There was this one gift someone brought, and it was opened up, and when it was opened up, it was an actual white elephant. Like, that was amazing. And so when it came my turn, guess what I had to do? I had to steal that white elephant. So I, your pastor, I stole at our leadership team Christmas party, but I did not end up with it. Someone else who's raising her hands, celebrating over here, she ended up with it, and I was happy for her. You know, that part of the fun of the Christmas season is gifts, and you know, we joke about it, and we had a really good time doing this white elephant. Maybe you've already had some family get-togethers or a work Christmas party, and you've been able to get some gifts. I want you to take a second, though, and I want you to think about what was the greatest Christmas present you ever received. Now, as you take a moment, I'm just going to give you something. Maybe it was sentimental. Maybe it was the value. Maybe it was the experience. Maybe it was just the time. Just take a second. What was the greatest Christmas present you ever received? Now, we're a family, and so even if the person sitting next to you is a complete stranger, you've never talked to him before, we're going to turn to the person next to us and just tell them, not the whole story, unless you want me to go for 2 hours, just a part of your story. Go ahead, turn to the person next to you and tell them, what was the greatest Christmas present you ever got? While they're doing that, NBC Online, drop in the chat. Let me know what was the greatest Christmas present you ever received, NBC Online. What was it? Who did it come from? Tell the story right there in the chat.
Oh, Lord, there's so many of them. I would say a little yellow car with bicycle pedals.
Ooh.
Open trunk.
I like it, Jamie. All right, I got to hear Jamie's gift. That was one of the most memorable presents. And for me, since I didn't get to tell Jamie, I'm going to tell everybody because that's what happens. I have the mic. So when I moved here to Arizona, I was living in an apartment. And so I was in my apartment, and then as soon as I had the chance to buy a house, I was so excited to buy a house, but not just because I was going to own a house, but because I am a huge dog lover. Like I just felt like life was not right without a dog in my life. And so when I was able to buy my house, it was going to be right around Christmas time. And so I went to my parents, I said, you know, what I want for Christmas is I want a dog. So we went to the Arizona Humane Society, we looked around, we played with all these different dogs, and my parents for Christmas, when I first moved here to Arizona, that first year when I got my house, they bought me the best dog I have ever had. His name was Kelby. He was a Ridgeback Shepherd mix, and he rode in the back of my Jeep. We did everything together. Kelby was the best dog, and we lost him during COVID. He passed away. And so I have lots of really great memories, but that I would definitely say, I have all the sentimental answers as well, my children, my marriage, but that was the one. My dog, Kelby, that was one of the greatest gifts. And you know, as we're here at Christmas time, the greatest gift that was ever given has to be more significant than whatever maybe you or I listed. The greatest gift that was ever given was the gift of Jesus Christ coming, an invitation from God to say, you can experience life again with me through my son. The greatest gift ever given was the birth of Jesus. But today I want to answer a different question. What is the greatest gift that you could give God this Christmas? Was God on your Christmas list? when you began to write down all of the different people, the grandkids, the great-grandkids, the children, the neighbors, the teachers, the coworkers, was God on our Christmas list? What's the greatest gift you could give God this Christmas? And I believe it can be summed up in one word: worship. Dear God, I'm so thankful that we can gather together here. I'm so thankful that we have the opportunity to come before you and we have the opportunity to worship you. God, thank you so much for sending your Son to leave the perfection of heaven, to come down to earth, to live in this broken and hurting place because of your love for us. God, I pray that today you will help us respond in worship. It's in your name we pray. Amen. I mentioned a little bit earlier, but last night we had a Christmas Carol sing-along. And at the Christmas Carol sing-along, we were singing all of these different songs. And in order to let you know who we're going to be talking about that God invited to the birth of Jesus today, I'm going to have to start with a little bit of a song. Now, you may be able to guess what it is. It goes a little bit like this. Feel free to join in if you want. We three kings of glory and art. That gives you a small taste of what last night sounded like. I was singing very loud. I loved singing, but we're talking today about the three kings, but not necessarily three kings, but the wise men. See, God extended an invitation to the wise men, and we're going to take a look at that today. These wise men, they were known as kingmakers. They were incredibly influential men. They were affluent men. They were people who had this opportunity and would be used in very significant purposes. And so we're going to learn and we're going to see these wise men and how God extends an invitation to these advisors to kings, to these kingmakers. Open up your Bibles to Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 and 2. If you have your phone, you can open up the YouVersion Bible app. It'll also be up on the screens. We're going to look at Matthew chapter 2, and it starts out and it says this: Jesus was born in Bethlehem in Judea during the reign of King Herod. Now, we're going to come back. We're going to talk about King Herod in a little bit. About that time, some wise men from eastern lands. So these wise men, these kingmakers, they weren't there in Bethlehem yet. It says that they were in far-off eastern lands. And so God extends this invitation to these wise men from far, far away. And that's important as we look through the rest of this story and as we read about this invitation that's been extended. About some time, these wise men from eastern lands arrived in Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the newborn king of the Jews?" It's interesting that they would use those words to describe who they were coming to see. The newborn king of the Jews. Remember earlier we talked about King Herod. King Herod was the appointed king of the Jews. The Romans had put King Herod in this position of influence, and now they're coming and they're saying, hey, we're looking for the king of the Jews, and that's not going to line up in a few moments when we continue on. It says this: we saw his star as it rose. At NBC, we are all about inviting people to experience God. Now, when we think about experiencing God, we can experience God through his word. We can read God's word and we can learn about the character of God. We can learn about God's plan for humanity. We can learn about God. We can experience God through his people. The Bible says that we are representatives of Jesus, that we are called to serve, that we are called to love, that we are called to allow the world around us to see God through us. But another way that we can experience God is through his creation. I love this example right here because God doesn't use a voice of a man. God doesn't use his word. God uses a star. Growing up in Colorado, I would look out every morning out my window, and there were the majestic Rocky Mountains. You can't look at the Rocky Mountains and not see God's handiwork, God's power. In this moment, these wise men, they've seen a star, and God is using a star to extend an invitation to experience Jesus. This is significant, church. As they see this star, it says that they have come to worship him. You see, worship should be our response to God's invitation. When God invites us to experience his goodness, his righteousness, his holiness, his perfection, his plan, his people, our response should be worship. This is what the wise men are coming to do. It says we have come to worship him. And worship is not just about singing. If it was, I would be in really big trouble. I am not a good singer. Maybe singing, you're like, you know what? Music, I could do it or look good or bad. I'm like, that's not my jam. Well, singing is not the only way that we are called to worship. So when you hear that, what gift can you give? I'm not saying you have to just sing a bunch of Christmas songs to God this Christmas. But we need to have a heart posture, an attitude, actions that convey our love, our devotion, our worship of God. And that's exactly what we're going to see as we continue on. You see, these wise men, as soon as they see the star, they take a road trip. Now, how many remember back when you took road trips and there was no Siri, there was no Waze app? Like, you had to take out your Rand McNally Atlas, and you were like, okay, what's an avenue? What's a street? Okay, these presidents are in order this way. Okay, this is where all the tree section of the town is. And you had to know all of those things in order to be able to find your directions. You guys been there? You guys remember those days? Man, I remember my dad would hand me the map and he'd say, okay, we were in Denver. And he'd say, okay, we need to find this and this. And I'd be like, where in the world is that? I'd be like, oh, go look for this. Okay. All right, now, and that was what was giving us instructions and helping us find places. Now, when you're sitting there and your wife is sitting next to you, and she has Siri, and she's sitting there and scrolling through TikTok, and you're like, babe, wait. Even with Siri, how many of you have ever gotten lost because you missed a turn? How many of you have ever had your spouse say, oh, whoa, right here. You're like, I'm in the left-hand lane. I can't make a right-hand turn. Chris, all right, I love it. See, these wise men, what did they have that was guiding them? They had a star. That is a step of faith, to follow a star. Do you know how far a star could make you travel? That could be a really long journey, folks. And these wise men, they're following this star, and it leads them to Jerusalem. This is what it says. It says King Herod. Now remember, we said King Herod was the king of the Jews. He was put in place by the Roman government. He was an Edomite. So he was not of the correct lineage to be a king of the Jews. He had been put in place from a militaristic government position. And when he's there, it says he was deeply disturbed when he heard this. Why do you think he was deeply disturbed that someone else would come, hey, we're come to see the new king of the Jews? Like, excuse me, here, that's me. No, the baby one. King Herod is like, no, this is not good. He was deeply disturbed when he heard this, as was everyone in Jerusalem. He calls a meeting of his leading priests and teachers of the religious law, and he says, hey guys, you guys study this stuff all the time. You've got to have the answer. I'm not following a star. Where is this new king of the Jews? Where is the Messiah? Where is the prophesied one going to be born? They respond, in Bethlehem in Judea. For this is what the prophet wrote. See, there had been prophecy after prophecy after prophecy that had pointed forward to this point. And these religious leaders and these prophets had studied them, and they said this, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are not least among the ruling cities of Judah. For a ruler will come from you, who will be the shepherd for my people, Israel. King Herod is his answer. Bethlehem. That's where the newborn king of the Jews is going to be born. I can imagine what Herod was thinking in that moment. All of the options, all of the ideas, all of the paths forward from this point. He privately, not in front of everyone else, he privately gathers the wise men. Herod called for a private meeting with the wise men, and he learned from them the time when the star first appeared. Why might this be important? He wants to have an idea. How old might this child be? How close is he to coming and taking over the throne? After they've told him this, then he tells them, go to Bethlehem. Search carefully for the child, and when you find him, come back and tell me so I can go and worship him too. Now, if you're going to buy that, I got some oceanfront property in Arizona that I want to sell to you. This isn't Herod's heart. Herod's like, I'm going to use these wise men. I'm smarter. I'm better than them. I'm going to tell them, yeah, you go find them, and then you come tell me so I too can go and humble myself and worship the new king. No, that's not Herod's intentions at all. Herod's intentions are the exact opposite, and we'll in fact see them later on, what his intentions were. Because for Herod, it was all about Herod, preserving his legacy, maintaining his power, his pride, his jealousy. How would they come to worship? Shouldn't wise men come to worship me? Shouldn't wise men come to bring me gifts? Shouldn't wise men come to see how well I'm ruling? This was the posture of Herod, a desire to maintain control and power. He said he wanted to go and worship. But there could not be something further from the truth. Church, I want to give us a warning, okay? And this is the warning. Satan desires to steal or to stop our worship of Jesus. Satan's like, I've got a baby in a manger. I'm going to take the king, one of the most powerful men, and I'm going to use him to silence the baby in the manger. I'm going to use King Herod to steal the worship back to himself. Satan says, I have to take care of this before Jesus' influence grows, before Jesus is able to represent the Father to the world. He says, I'm going to use my person, King Herod, to steal worship from Jesus. Right now, in my life, Satan wants to steal my worship of God. He wants to stop me from worshiping God. He does it in so many different ways, right? He'll distract us and say, hey, let me just redirect you over here. That this sports team is that much more important than your Savior. He'll try to distract us over here and say, you know what? This family get together, this is that much more important than worship of your Savior. He'll try to redirect us and he'll say, your pride, your reputation is more important than you sharing with people the love of God and the gospel and inviting them to experience God. And he will try to get us to redirect our life from a life and a posture of worship of Jesus to say, you know what? It's about me. It's about other items. It's about other relationships. It's about other things. Satan wants to steal or to stop your worship of Jesus. And he will go to great lengths and great deception to do it. At Christmas time, he would love nothing more than for this to be a time that is devoted to just memories and money and gifts, and for us to lose sight of our Savior. Satan wants to steal and stop our worship of Jesus. It says this in verse 9, after this interview, the wise men went their way. And the star that they had seen in the east, it guided them to guess where? Exactly what had been prophesied, to Bethlehem. It went ahead of them and it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they were filled with joy. I don't know how long these guys have been traveling. But can you imagine what a relief it would be? Okay, we weren't crazy. We've been journeying for weeks, months, years. We don't know. We finally arrived. We don't got to keep going any further. They had got to be so relieved in this moment, but even beyond that, they knew the purpose of their travels. They knew why they had given so much time and resources. They entered the house, and they saw the child with his mother Mary, and they bowed down and worshiped him. I'm going to just take a guess that your boss or CEO has not come into your office and bowed down and said, "You are the best employee I've ever had." I'm going to take a guess. There is not a sitting president of the United States of America that has walked into a random pediatric ward at a random hospital, walked up to a baby and said, "Wow, this baby is incredible." That's what's happening here. We lose sight of the awe and the wonder and how significant this worship is. These were not just any people. These are people of power and influence and wealth and prestige who had traveled a great distance to walk through the door and humble themselves. Not to an established king, but to a newborn king, to a baby. You see, when they kneel, there's power in posture. When you see someone kneeling, you know they're in a place of vulnerability and submission. And so maybe God's not asking us literally to get down on our hands and knees this Christmas in front of a nativity. Maybe you wouldn't be able to get back up. No shots fired. But maybe God's asking us in our hearts to approach Jesus from a position of humility and submission, which is worship.
Yes, it is.
Saying, "My life is all about you, Jesus. I live for you. I breathe for you. I worship you." But it doesn't stop there, because then they continue on, and it says in verse 11, the second half, "Then they opened their treasure chests, and they gave him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh." If you've sung the song, We Three Kings, you know these three items. But why these three items? Why wasn't it something else? Well, lots of different people have lots of different opinions. Some people would say, well, these were all things that they had brought from their homeland, that this was a diverse group of wise men, and so they brought something that was significant from each and every one of their homelands. And so they're like, this is what my people would use to worship a new king or to celebrate a new king, and so that's what they brought. Well, that may very well be what was going on. But I believe that there may even be more symbolism beyond that. That there may have been more significance, more purpose behind God's plan in gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And I want us to look at how these gifts became an act of worship. The first one was what, church? Gold. If you're on NBC Online, go ahead and drop that in the chat. Gold. See, gold is a symbolism of wealth and royalty. Gold is something that would normally be presented to a head of state or to a king or someone that you'd say, okay, sweetie, I bought you a gold wedding band. It's special. It's significant. It carries great value. But in this story, it's also an example of God's divine providence in a very significant way. You see, they present this gift of gold. They worship baby Jesus, they bow down, they give their gift, and then guess what happens the next day? Watch this. Turn over to Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 through 15. After the wise men were gone, an angel of the Lord appears to Joseph in a dream and says this, "Get up." Well, why do I need to get up? The baby's hungry. No, get up. Flee to Egypt with this child and his mother, the angel says. Stay there until I tell you to return, because who? We said he didn't want to go worship him, right? I guess we see now the real motives of Herod, right? Satan is having his way. He's trying to steal and stop the worship of Jesus because Herod is going to search for the child to kill him. I can't imagine hearing that as a dad. Can you imagine hearing that? Like the head of state, the leader of the military, the leader of government is trying to find your child and kill them. I can't imagine hearing those words. That night, Joseph left for Egypt with the child and Mary, his mother, and they stayed there until Herod's death. This fulfilled what the Lord had spoken through the prophet, "I called my son out of Egypt." I want us to see something really cool here, church. Our worship provides for God's purposes. Watch this, check this out, okay? They are there in Bethlehem. If I told you tomorrow you needed to leave your house, move to a foreign country immediately, how easy would that be? Not easy. If you are a brand new, newlywed couple with a brand new baby, think back to when that took place. How easy would it have been for you to leave and move to another country like that? Would that have been difficult, church? An angel shows up and says, this is what you have to do. But God had already provided the provision they needed. The wise men had just presented them with gold. Gold will provide for their journey. Gold will provide for where they're going to stay. God says, I've already got the plan. I'm way ahead of you. A long time ago, I set out wise men to journey from eastern lands, carrying with them gifts that are going to provide for the protection and the preservation of my son. You see, when we worship God, when we honor God, He already knows the purpose that He's going to use that worship for. As a church, today we're doing our year-end Christmas offering. And when I introduced this, I told you there's these things that we see God that He's doing and He's preparing us for. And He's asking us in this next year to go after. And I said, we have this opportunity to invest in the next season. God knows exactly what resources He's going to bring. God knows exactly what His plan is for the next season of our church. God says, you know what? I will use my people to provide for my plan. He used the wise men to provide gifts of gold, to provide for what He was going to do in Mary and Joseph and baby Jesus' life. And so if you're here today and you had your red envelope, and when you were filling this out, you're like, I don't know why I'm doing this. Maybe it's an act of worship. Maybe God's using you to provide for His plan, for the next season. Maybe today, in a very similar way, your obedience to the Holy Spirit's leading is an act of worship. You may never know the kid, the young adult, the marriage that will be impacted as a result of your worship. Because we serve a God who has a plan so much greater than you and I. God's providence and plan is so much more significant. He weaved all of this story together to bring us to this moment where the gold was used to preserve His child. But it wasn't just gold that was presented. The second gift was that of frankincense. Frankincense, it's this gum, it's this resin from, let me see if I can say this right, from a boswellia tree. It was used to make perfume and to make incense. Just this last week, Tracy and I were having a date, and in our date, we were playing this game, and you had to write like different things that you knew about your spouse. And so it was like all these different questions about the other person. And it got to this one question: what is my favorite cologne to wear? Or what is my favorite perfume for her to wear? I wrote down my answer. She wrote down her answer. We flipped them over, and we both got it right. It doesn't matter to me because I cannot smell. I have the world's worst nose. I can't smell anything. You know what that means I did for our entire time we had babies? I got all the droopy diapers. Because I can't smell. I could be covered in cologne. I could walk by you and you're like, woo, Pastor, ease off on that cologne. I would have no idea. Tracy gets so frustrated. She'll get dressed all up to go on a nice date, and she'll be so beautiful, and she'll put on perfume, and she'll come and just say, how do you like the new perfume I got? And I'm like, you got a new perfume? I just can't smell. But the cool thing about smells and cologne and perfume and incense is that it permeates. Normally, when you walk into a room and it smells good, you know that it smells good. Equally so, if you walk into a room that has a poopy diaper in it, everybody's like, whoa, somebody needs to take out the trash. What is going on in this room? And see, this gift of frankincense, it points back to this. God often used incense or aromas or smells as a reminder. It's kind of like that sugar cookie candle that you have in your house, right? It's Christmas time when the pine or sugar cookie candles come out. You know this is the right season. Well, this is what God used. He said that his people, when they smell certain smells, should be reminded of his holiness. They should be reminded of his character. This is exactly what God instructs his people in Exodus to do. It's in Exodus chapter 30. And God's giving instructions for incense for the tabernacle. And this is what he says in Exodus 30, verse 34. Then the Lord said to Moses, gather fragrant spices, like good-smelling spices, resin droplets, mollusk shells, and galbanum. Mix these fragrant spices with, what does it say right there, church? What was the gift that the wise men brought? Weigh them out in equal amounts using the usual techniques of an incense maker. Blend the spices together. Sprinkle them with salt to produce a pure and holy incense. Not just any ordinary incense. This is date night incense. This is the special stuff. This is the holy incense. To be reminding of a holy God. Grind some of the mixture into a very fine powder. Frankincense is white and it's pure. Put it in front of the Ark of the Covenant, where I will meet you in the tabernacle. If you have a physical Bible, I would encourage you to underline this, because I think it begins to explain the gift of frankincense. You must treat this incense as most holy. This was a gift that was going to be a reminder through the fragrance of the beauty and the righteousness and the holiness of God. For generations, the Israelites would have known that this is a gift that points to the holiness of God. When I fail, have a bad attitude, use words that are hurtful, those things stink. You know your kids, right? Your grandkids. Well, there's things that they do and you see, you're just like, that is just so wrong. It's foul. It's disgusting. It's hurtful. You see, this gift was a reminder that while we live in a broken world where I sin, where I do wrong all of the time, that it is not about my merit. It's about God's holiness. I worship because of God's holiness. The church is full of broken, messed up people. You stay here long enough, you'll find out. We make wrong choices. We say things. We hurt each other's feelings. We don't always have the right attitude and the right posture, and that's why we don't worship the church. We're part of the church, but we don't worship the church. The church isn't holy. I'm not holy. I'm a broken and flawed pastor. People will let you down here. We're still a family. We still love each other. We forgive each other. But the one that's worthy of our worship is, oh boy, is it not me. I hate to break it to you, but it's not you either. It's God that's worthy of our worship. It's God that's worthy of our praise. It's God that is worthy. That when we see and we think of this frankincense, we can think of the holiness and righteousness of God. Have you ever received a weird Christmas gift, church? Yeah? Anybody, you ever got it? You like open it and the gift giver's right there in front of you and you're like, oh, that's unique. It was one Christmas, it was a family member, and they gave me a gift. And, you know, gifts come from such a wonderful place. If you're watching this, family member, I'm not picking on you, I love you. But they gave me a gift, and I opened it up, and this gift was a nose hair trimmer. I am a hairy dude, okay? I get it. It's the Italian in me. I know I'm hairy. I know I have a beard. I know I'm hairy. But it just seems like there's something wrong about giving somebody a nose hair trimmer for Christmas. Like that's something you buy yourself, or maybe somebody hints at, or if you buy it for somebody, just don't wrap it up and give it to them for Christmas. Just leave it on their doorstep, ring the doorbell. They can check their ring later and see who gave it to them. Sometimes some gifts, they just don't add up. They may be very useful, but it just doesn't make sense. And this last gift, I wonder if when Mary and Joseph received it from the wise men, they might have done a double take. Gold, yep, I'll take that. Thank you very much. Okay, in our worship, frankincense, okay, this is special, this is sacred, this is holy. Makes sense. I love it. Thank you, wise men. Myrrh. Just the name of it just doesn't sound as good as gold and frankincense, right? Myrrh. You see, myrrh was also a fragrance, a spice. It was also used at times in worship, but it was more significantly often used in preparing a body for burial. Why do you give a newborn baby a fragrance used for preparing of a body for burial? Very expensive, very desired, but not something a newborn baby or a brand new mom would be expected to be given at a baby shower. But we can see in John 19:39 what myrrh was used to do. John 19:39, and it's talking about Joseph of Arimathea. It says, with him, Joseph of Arimathea, came Nicodemus, the man who had come to Jesus at night. He brought 75 pounds of perfumed ointment made from myrrh. They were preparing the body of Jesus. They were preparing the body of Jesus after his crucifixion on the cross. See, Jesus came to give his life. This was his purpose. He came to die on the cross for your sin and for mine. He came to give his life for all of humanity. And what was present at his burial? Myrrh. Our worship is because of Jesus' sacrifice. When we think of that gift, when we hear the nativity story, let us be reminded that it wasn't just a baby in a manger, but that baby would live a perfect life, would grow, and would ultimately be crucified on the cross for your debt and mine, for your brokenness and sin and mine. A football team, a car, a job, not even another person has ever given their life for me. This is why Jesus is worthy of our worship. The story continues on in Matthew, and it says, when it was time to leave, they returned to their own country by another route. They outsmarted Herod. They're like, nah, we're not going back and telling Herod where baby Jesus is. Not happening. They go a different way. For God had warned them in a dream not to return to Herod. They were not going to allow Herod to silence them. You see, God's invitation always furthers the gospel. God invited these wise men, and then as they leave, they don't just go back to Jerusalem and see King Herod. No, they go back to the eastern lands that they came from. Last week we saw how the shepherds, when they got to witness the angels inviting them, they said, let's go. Let's go see this newborn baby. And then as soon as they've seen Jesus, what do? They run around their town. You've got to hear what just happened to us. These angels showed up, and then we saw baby Jesus. It was miraculous. The simple experienced the extraordinary. And in this story now, the wise men, they experience baby Jesus, and then they return. And guess what they return back to? Their old life. Hanging out with kings and emperors, philosophers, people of position and wealth in the eastern lands. See, from the moment Jesus was born, he was already preparing for the expansion of the gospel. He had already prepared the invitations that would allow for the gospel to go further. And Jesus says this in Matthew 24:14, and the good news about the kingdom will be preached throughout the whole world, so that all nations, all people will hear it, and then the end will come. See, God's desire is that we share the gospel, that we invite people to experience God both here in Mesa, Tempe, Chandler, Gilbert, and around the world. I'm so thankful for our missionaries that literally travel around the world representing Jesus in other cultures. At their own discomfort, sacrificing their own time, their own resources to go and invite people to experience God, to further the gospel. This is what God used these wise men to do, to explode and to expand the gospel. So how do we further the gospel? I want us to think of three words that are ways that we can worship, ways that we can further the gospel. And the first one is this: we must surrender. Now, when I say surrender, I want us to reflect on this surrender corporately. We must surrender to the plans and purposes God has for us as a body. We looked just a few weeks ago from the Great Commission and the Great Commandment, what God has called us as a church to do, and we simplified it and put it into one simple phrase so that we could say, this is our mission. I am going to live in a surrendered posture to saying, God, if this is what you're asking us as a church to do, this is what we will do. That we will be all about inviting people to experience God and follow Jesus with their entire life. So as a church, we must surrender and say, if that's what God has asked us to do, I'm going to be all in on the gospel. I'm going to be all in my entire life to following Jesus. This is what we must surrender to. It's his plan for you to say, I will become a fully devoted follower of Christ. God, every area, my time, my relationships, my money, my job, everything, I will surrender to you. I will give it to you. This is an act of worship. This will further the gospel. And then secondly, we said invitation. I am so thankful that yesterday, 50 1,500 doors received an invitation to Christmas Eve services. Like, that is incredible. That is bigger than any one person could do by themselves. Like, if you just said, okay, for the next week, I'm just going to pass a door hanger, ding, all day, maybe you get to 1,500. I'm so thankful that as a church, we said, okay, we're going to be surrendered to this mission. We're going to be about invitation. And I believe it's an act of worship. And this last one, surrender, invitation, worship. Today's a unique day as a church. I mentioned it earlier. We're doing our year-end Christmas offering. And if this is your first time here today, if you're a first-time guest, if you don't consider yourself a member of our church family, this isn't for you. This is for our church family. But as a church family, this is an opportunity to do an act of worship. Now, it's not about the amount. It's about the posture. It's not going to be equal amounts, but it's going to be equal sacrifice. When we sent out the letter, we said our desire was to see 100% participation of our church. Why do we want that? Because I want you to have the opportunity today to worship God in a specific, significant way, and for us to do it all together on one weekend. For us to say, okay, the Magi, the wise men, they brought their gifts, and this is what's available to me right now. God, will you take this, and will you use it for your divine providence? Will you use it to impact that one life? And so as we wrap up service, I want to just give you the instructions for this. There's a box out there. If you don't have the red envelope, that's okay. You can use the envelope in the seat in front of you. You can give online through our Church Center app. But I want you to see this as an act of worship. The amount that you put on there, maybe God's led you and you say, I'm giving $20,000 today because that's what God's provided for me and that's what I'm doing. And you're going to be that gold. You're going to launch us into that next season and God is going to bless you and you're going to be so able to see Him use that. Maybe for you, you're going to say, you know what? I did not plan for this. I was not prepared for this. I've got $5 in my wallet and I guess that's what God's provided for me to be able to worship Him with today. See, it's about us participating together in being surrendered, in invitation, in worship. But this doesn't even compare to the gift that God gave to me. It's worship, it's surrender, but it doesn't compare to what God did for me. God sent His Son to come and to die on the cross, to pay the price for your sin and mine. The greatest gift ever given was the gift of Jesus. And here's the cool thing about a gift. You can't earn it or deserve it. This gift of salvation, this gift of a relationship with God, there's nothing you can do that's good enough. Can't say enough prayers, can't help enough people across the street. You can't give enough to a church or a nonprofit. There's nothing you and I can do to receive it because it's a gift. Jesus paid the price. He died on the cross. He rose again so that you and I can receive this free gift of eternal life. If you've never done that, I want to give you that opportunity today. So I ask everybody just close your eyes, not to manipulate or just to give you a private moment with God. And so if you're already a follower of Christ, this is what I'm going to ask you to do right now. Will you pray for those who are not yet followers of Christ that may come to a Christmas Eve service next week? Just take this next moment and in your seats, just be praying for that. If you're not yet a follower of Christ, what I want you to do is I want you just to take a second and just think about the fact that the God of the universe, the creator of the world, sent His Son to die on the cross for you, to pay the price for your brokenness. And He's standing in front of you and He's holding a gift and He's extending it to you and saying, will you receive the gift of my Son? the forgiveness of a relationship with me. If you want to receive that gift, all you have to do is tell God. Just say, God, will you forgive me? I will put my faith and trust in you. He can hear your thoughts. He can feel your emotions. God knows everything that you're thinking right now. Maybe today's the day that you begin a relationship with Jesus and everything changes. God, I'm so thankful for this church family. God, I'm so thankful for this journey that you have us on as a church and for the opportunity that we have to worship you with our entire lives, with every area of our life. God, as we go through this Christmas season, I'm so thankful for the examples that you've set for us of the invitations you gave to Mary and Joseph and the shepherds and the wise men, the impact that came as a result of those invitations. God, my prayer is that we will just continue to follow you, individually and corporately. That together we will learn what it is to truly worship. We love you, God. It's in your name we pray. Amen. Thank you so much, church. Next week, we will have our Christmas Eve, or this week now, I guess Sunday's the first day that we have. Friday, 7 p.m. I've already talked with different people, and they're like, oh, I'm so glad we have a 7 p.m. I had stuff going on Saturday. I will be here at 7 p.m. So come 7 p.m. Saturday, we'll have 2 services, 4 and 6 p.m. So if you already serve, if you're here and you're like, I can be at 2 of these,